what's up, Trash Talkers? Listen, it's impossible to fight, okay, if you don't know what you're fighting for. Does that make sense? Like, if you're in the dumps and you're struggling with mental health, things of that nature, it's going to continue tearing you down, all right? Because you're consistently trying to fight something, which is that demon, which is usually something from the past, right? Maybe that why needs to be fighting for your future. Let that be your why. Get the hell up and start fighting for your future. Stop fighting things that happened in the past. Easier said than done, right? Go seek help. It's okay not to be okay. A lot of people need to hear this. You are more of a warrior and a fighter if you stand up and say, hey, this has to stop. I need to go seek help. The stigma, everything has changed. It's okay not to be okay.
And so my honesty cap is dedicated to a little, we'll call it a public service announcement for civilians and other people in the military. There are a few people that you should always take their stories with a grain of salt. Vegans, CrossFitters, and special operations guys that tell you that they were special operations without being prompted. The first thing they say is, yeah, I used to be soft. Right. The only unicorn in that entire group is like a special operations guy that was like a vegan and did CrossFit. That guy's probably going to stay quiet for a little bit longer because he's confused as what he should talk about first. That's the only reason. Right. Anybody that says that they were soft without being prompted or without it being like a normal part of your communications is probably either an enabler or going to tell you a bunch of stuff that's not exactly true.
What's up, Trash Talkers? Hitting you up this morning with a special promo on how to dress when you are doing PT in civilians, but you want everybody to know you're an Army. This comes from the Buddy Beckwith fashion design of how to work out. So first, you can notice the RI panties. Not Ranger panties, but Ranger instructor panties. The green socks, the knee brace for the old guys. Don't forget the M frames. Now the shirt, don't wear the Trash Talk shirt while you're running. This is just for the promo. You want to put on like an 80-second shirt or like your favorite airborne shirt so everybody knows that you're a veteran. That's the most important thing. And you start with this stretch. Buddy Beckwith taught me this one. Ready to go.
This is the Veteran Trash Talk Hour, hosted by Nick, Dave, and Buddy. Real warriors making fun of other real warriors. Try to not get triggered.
What's up, Trash Talkers? What is up, Gruntworks Nation? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 18 of the Trash Talk Hour. Special guest today is Army veteran Vito and paratrooper, so he is better than you. And as usual, I'm here with Buddy and Nick. What's going on, guys?
I mean, we got to do something about this second season. Like,
yeah, I know. Like,
you
technically should be on like the third or fourth season already.
Episode
yeah.
6.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it by year. I think it's what we got to do.
I like that.
We got major problems.
I like that.
Major problems.
So would we say
you can do whatever you want?
Season 25, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we could be. No, I'm a little lucky to be, in my house doing this. The winds have destroyed a lot of things in my area, but thankfully they were pushing everything away from our valley for us. So happy to be with you guys.
Yeah, crazy times.
Glad you're here. Glad you're not just warming your hands by the house fire. I guess that's always a plus.
And we got so much going on already this year. You guys hear about the Zuckerberg stuff? Now he suddenly is all pro like freedom of speech and everything. Like,
well, yeah,
and remove.
Well, it has to be.
Well, I think it lines up with like TikTok potentially being shut down on the 19th. And now he wants to make a lot more money with Facebook, obviously. Like I saw him on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they're getting rid of the fact checkers and all that shit on Facebook. He wants to keep up with X and all those other platforms. Like, how did he just suddenly switch? You know, Nick and I, you and I talked.
We all know this.
You told me that he was with Trump like 2 weeks ago. And
he was at dinner in Mar-a-Lago, and all of a sudden he's born again freedom fighter. Like, it's. I'll give him a little bit of credit because,
for sure,
like, he's the CEO of a massive company. Like, he doesn't know what those fact checkers are doing. And just like when you're that large of an organization, if you have toxic middle management that are all crazy left-wing liberals, just like we got punished by it, you know, where it's like Cheers Devil Dogs was bullying, you know, for name calling. No, you suck. You're not a fact checker. In fact, you shouldn't even be involved in this. Like, whoever made this decision.
He couldn't even say the word COVID. And he went into that a little bit, that was the scary one. He was like, he got calls from the administration when they were pushing the vaccine and everything. And he even says on the Joe Rogan podcast, he's like, I'm very pro-vaccine. But it was really crazy that the administration would call me and tell me, like, you have to remove anything anti-vaccine. Yeah. And Joe was like pressing, like, who in the administration? He kind of like, you know, didn't quite answer that, but he was like, definitely the administration calling him to say, hey, you got to take that off of Facebook so we can continue pushing this agenda. It's pretty wild.
Yeah. I'd start looking into some stocks into Meta if I were you guys with TikTok being shut down.
For sure.
Well, might be a good time to get some investments in.
Shark Tank wants to buy it. The bald-headed dude from Shark Tank.
Oh, Kevin O'Leary?
Kevin? Yeah.
Mr. Wonderful?
I think so, yeah. I saw that he's like, they're in like negotiation, but the owner is
there's a Shark. You brought Shark Tank. You brought up Shark Tank, and that's something that Mark Cuban said, because he was like, when there was somebody who was like, hey, most of my sales are on Facebook, he's like, I'm out. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago because of when they were censoring everything. He was like, your product's great. He's like, but Facebook could shut that down in a second and my money's gone. So no, I'm out. And what do? We sell all of our stuff on Facebook. It's like, we have months where they shut us down, put us in the bottom of the algorithm, and our store volume, our website traffic goes to like down 70% from the last month. It's like, what the fuck?
That's a meme. I guess we're safe now for a little bit, right?
Like when Jesse shares a meme on Gruntworks with 600,000 followers, and you tag @followers, and it gets 6 likes.
And then you share the same meme on Veteran Trash Talk, and it gets like 5,000.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Interesting.
We got old Linda saying that from Vegas. Oh, Dave's mom's watching. I love how she calls herself Dave's mom.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Dave's mom.
Love you, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so we aren't really good. I mean, I guess it is a conspiracy, and I don't know too much about it. So we got all kinds of crazy stuff in the world going on. And I guess this one hits close to home because Nick was almost affected by it. Vito, you're out there too, right? In California, or where are you at?
No. Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in New England. I moved from California to New England. I got wires.
But obviously, we were all super concerned. And I'm just going to I don't know too much about it, but I do know that seasonal, it's kind of weird that the fires started. Like, I don't think they usually start in January. It's usually in the summertime, if I'm not mistaken. And then Nick's going to go on a whole rant with this. And then some of the areas.
I'm sure Buddy will probably go on the rant. I wanted to give you the facts.
Yeah.
Right. That we do know. And again, what we learned, I've already had to block a few people off VTT official on this topic because, they're spreading a lot of hate and they're hate towards us, for sharing a video that we're about to show you. And it's like, this video was sent to me by my neighbor, who's the guy in the fucking video. Like, we're not using it to profit. We're using it to bring attention to what our first responders are doing right now, working 50 to 60 plus hours without sleep, right? Going and doing things above and beyond what they're supposed to be doing. But when we started Task Force Lahaina, which was hilarious because my buddy just said, hey, is there anything we can do? And I'll go, probably not, but let me call somebody. So I called Scott Mann, who orchestrated the Pineapple Express. and we got on a Zoom call, and literally like 15 minutes later, there was a Signal channel, and Elon Musk team was on it, right? And it was like, I'm sitting around, I'm texting my buddy, I'm like, and we're not talking anymore, like we're not even in like the main screen of the Zoom call, even though it was our Zoom room. It was like, I don't think we're running this show anymore. But
all right, kids, get to the side.
Yeah, but it was like super awesome to watch how fast it happened. And the main thing that Scott said, and Ben Owen reiterated it, was regardless of what you think, regardless of how much fact there is that this is, human error or started by humans, if you want to get money and supplies to the people that need it, you need to dispel all the conspiracy theories when it comes to getting help to the people that need it. All right, because once you start saying this was started by man, you're going to have a lot of people stop giving money to help people. You're going to have stop people that are like, I'm not going to give supplies. This is all fake anyways, right? And it's like, no.
I guess the why is that important right there and then.
Yeah,
it's
there's an update. Those of you following us on Gruntworks and Veteran Trash Talk, and I said that I was going to bring a bunch of supplies down to the Rose Bowl where their headquarters are at for the Altino fire. They don't want me to do that. They said, we got plenty of stuff. He was like, concentrate on the people that need it. And then, so now we got Monica, VTT Zoe 254 cable. She is the vice whatever commander of the Legion Post in Hollywood, and the Red Cross is going to use them to funnel supplies through them. So any money that you guys send to Stars to that reel, or any money you send during this show, if you do decide to do that, will go towards helping the Hollywood Legion Post get supplies to veterans that their houses burned down, all right, or are needing help. So if you do that, trust us, every single freaking cent will go to it. I'm the one that controls the bank account, so you can come find me if you don't think that's true. Anyways, I wanted to show you a video of what I got sent to me last night from, my new, he is my friend.
This blew up in minutes. You see, everyone's just kind of losing their head. This is Altino Drive. We're coming up on a fire CP. I'm en route to evacuate some autistic kids stuck in a house somewhere up in Kinlow Mesa. It's a high-risk area for this fire. There's about 200 homes in high risk, and well, that's where we're going. You can see all the embers are burning.
That's what it looks like when you're going through the fire.
Damn.
Yeah, so that's what he sent me yesterday, and he said that the video cut out because as the fire actually jumped when they got to the house where they were evacuating the kids, and he's like, if we would have been 2 minutes later, there's no way they would have made it out. He's like, the fire jumped over them, and the car overheated, everything died, all the electric cars. Like, we barely got out of there, and the car started back up again, and we got them out of there. So, hey, shout out to you, Jeff, and everything that the first responders and firemen are doing out there. Again, what we get into now, which again is slightly, it will have some humor in it, and it will be funny, and there will be things that are sad and all that kind of stuff. It's just what we do when we talk about it as who we are. But I don't know what that was. I've been getting all kinds of stuff pop up on here today. Just know that we are actively helping the first responders and everybody, like especially Monica, and the thing is going on. So we'll get into it. We'll just get right into the fires. Before Buddy goes, I was saying something right away on one of our text threads that Buddy's not allowed to be on, and it hurt his feelings. But
the Arizona California connection.
Yeah, the Arizona. I mean, we don't want to add Alabama in there just yet. So
you got to get
we
Golden
might
Tee
get there. We
first.
might
to
add
get in that
Vito
group,
for New England
buddy.
because at least
Once
they're
you have Golden Tee, you can get into that group.
Yeah, you got to have a Golden Tee machine to be in that group.
Yeah, I'm not in that category yet.
Yeah, however, it was this windstorm is the same front in everything that's going on across the United States, where it brought chilling temperatures down to the south, right? And it's a mixture of everything in the climate and the Santa Ana winds coming on. There's 100-mile-per-hour winds, right?
Before or after
forecasted? Forecasted, right? Forecasted for about a week. We knew it was coming, right? One of the saving graces of that was the first responders were put on high alert because of those winds. It's just protocol, right? So they already were on high alert. However, it's not fire season, right? It's not like these winds came down and hit active fires and now you're screwed, right? Here's some of the things I've picked up from the streets. All right, from what I'm hearing from professionals is saying, and like I said, humanitarian wise, I would love to think, because it really doesn't matter in the long run. These houses are destroyed. These families they're everything they had is destroyed. People have lost their lives. That's the main thing. But when we look into it, it's hard to think that it's not started, but you want to think that it was like a homeless encampment, that started the fire. And they just didn't understand what they were doing. And then another thing that I heard was how windy it is. It is possible that it sparks a power line, right, with how windy it is. So those sparks in a desert, like Buddy will get into, and they hit that. And with those winds, there was zero chance in those two areas where those fires started where they could stop it, right? There wasn't a chance in hell. So, yeah, that's my take on it is I believe that it's arson. I believe, again, you have all the other conspiracy aspects of it to where the president landed there that day.
Yeah.
Right. You had a no-fly zone.
Airspace, right? No-fly zone.
No-fly zone because of the Air Force One. However, that's a little bit of truth. The main truth is that most planes couldn't fly because there was 100-mile-per-hour winds. Right. So that's why. But yeah, there was to recon the fires and to see that there was a no-fly zone from Air Force One, right? And again, if you're going to start a fire, I'm going to go towards where there's facts, to where even if you research it now, how quickly people have forgotten about Australia and that large bushfire was started by a left-wing nut job. All right. And we still, if you research it now, it'll say, yeah, it was started by somebody, but the main reason it got so big was because of climate change. No, it got so big because a left-wing nut job started it. That's why, right? So, I always say the most dangerous people in America because of the size of the population is the left, what we now define as a liberal. All right, the left wing liberal is the largest population of the crazies. The right wing people are just as dangerous. All right, they're just not as big. So there's just not as many of them. Right, they all in that southeast conference section of the country. Right, maybe a little bit of Indiana. Right, the left wing liberal population is massive, and they are batshit crazy and will burn down a neighborhood. We've already seen them do that in cities. They will burn down cities when they're not happy.
Did you see Mel Gibson on? Did you see Mel Gibson on Fox?
That's my take on it. I'm done.
You're done. Yeah, I don't know. Like before Buddy goes, like the Mel Gibson on Fox was pretty interesting. Like he says too that potentially it could have been started by somebody. Like, and it's not AI because you see all the crazy AI videos. And I feel like he wanted to say more, but he just like kept it to himself, But that clip is all over the internet right now. And he's like, it potentially.
Like he goes, what's scary is there are people that if somebody asked them to do that,
they have
they would go do it.
Yeah.
They would go light that match and know that all that Pacific Palisades, which again, it's okay. They're rich. They have insurance, right?
He lost his entire
destroyed
home.
12,000 homes
Yeah.
in a day.
That's a lot,
In a
man.
day.
That's crazy.
So sad, dude.
Like, man. Not to mention all the iconic little beach houses that have been there for a long time that Dave and your family's out there with us. Those are all gone, right? And those have been there for 50, 60 years. And those aren't loaded rich people.
Yeah. Yeah.
In there. Like,
yeah.
yes, maybe we'll just build some new hotels there, huh? There you go.
I heard that too. That's another one. But like, I'm not informed enough. I'm just going off of like, obviously, I mean, most of the conspiracies we look into, and not even necessarily calling this a conspiracy, but yeah, that's devastating, man. And there's nothing you can do. You know, I mean, you were pretty close to having to evacuate, right? You didn't have power for what? Full 24 hours?
Yeah, power for 24 hours. They shut it down in the event that, it did jump the mountain. We were about, I'd say on a map, about 2 inches from being in you don't have enough gas to get to California with only, going this far. But yeah, if the winds would have shifted, we would have been in some trouble.
Buddy, what's your take on all of this, brother?
I have a lot of takes.
Don't give us any doomsday shit, man. Be happy today, okay? You had all kinds of people.
Oh, do it.
After
Do it. Get after it. Don't censor him. Don't censor him, Mark.
I would say, to be honest, the first thing is like
check.
It's way too soon it's way too soon to figure out exactly how each of the fires started. And I think there's a very natural reaction when you see all of the administration and you hear about their policies to kind of convolute the administration and the people that work for those administrations, and to put them all in the same category and to feel your wrath, kind of what Nick was saying earlier. The firefighters, the police officers, the people that are on the streets doing the work have very little to do with the policies that they have to operate under. So it's kind of like, we were all in the Army, you know what I mean? We were deployed doing things that the administration made us do, and looking back on them, that maybe some of them weren't the right things, weren't the right, but we were trying to do the best that we could for the people that were around us, even, whether they were Iraqis, Afghanis, whatever, and the people that we worked with.
Bravo company.
Like we were always trying to do the right thing for those people, no matter what the president, the secretary of defense, and all of the generals had in mind. So those two things can be discussed separately. Like, should people send, money and relief? Yeah, of course they should. Should they not question the policies of the people who created the environment that these fires thrived in? Of course they should. Like, of course it's not too soon to hold.
Yeah, that's where they get you. You're being insensitive bringing that up already.
Yeah.
You'll forget about it in 2 weeks if we don't.
Yeah. Well, of course they will. Like, well, look at the Hurricane Helene that came through and destroyed all of all the stuff in North Carolina and Tennessee, that those people at this point are under 3 or 6 inches of snow at least, and still homeless, still trying to rebuild. Nobody said a word since about 3 weeks after it happened. And they didn't get the benefit of the president making a promise that he knows he doesn't have to keep, because he's not going to be president when we're going to pay 100% of your rebuild costs for the next 6 months. Like, well, that's an easy promise to make when you're only going to be the president for another few days. It's also an easy promise to make when you know that just the permitting to rebuild those houses is going to take years to get through because of the bureaucracy that they have to go through in California. So by the time they need the money to rebuild, that 100% is going to have long been gone away. It's just something to placate people so they can be like, oh, the president's doing the right thing. Like, the president's not doing anything. He's making a promise that he knows doesn't have there's no consequence to saying those words. But because because people would just be like, well, 6 months from now, well, hey, the federal government owns me $3 million to rebuild my house, and they're like, well, that president's not here anymore. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, just
well,
because
what conditions are you talking about that were set?
Well, it's not real hard to do just a little bit of research, and
on TikTok.
The most people that live in the rest of the United States that don't live in like Arizona, Nevada, and California, we understand that if you live in a desert and you modify the water flow so that you can make your desert oasis into Shangri-La, and then you stop watering it, like maple trees don't grow in Hollywood. Like palm trees don't grow all over the place in California just naturally. Those are put there by people, and then they need water. So when you shut off the flow of water, and the crazy thing is you shut off the flow of water in the north and dump it in the Pacific Island or Pacific Ocean, and then in the south you desalinate water so that you can drink it. It's mind-blowing to the rest of the country that just goes, well, that seems stupid. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing it? And like, oh, well, there's this fish. Well, that's cool. If you're going to protect the fish, get rid of all of the deadfall that you just made by turning your desert back into a desert. You can't take a plant. Like if you go get a Christmas tree in September and you put it in your house and it's green and lush and great, and then Uncle Charlie comes over in January when you forgot to take it down and tries to put his cigarette out on the fucking branch, and it goes up and starts your house on fire. That's a logical conclusion to a decision that you have made. You decided to surround yourself with dry tinder, and
you're victim blaming the desert.
I'm not victim. The desert is doing what the desert does.
You're victim blaming the desert.
It is a desert. Who I'm victim blaming is the people in California.
The desert should be able to do whatever it wants, buddy. The desert should be able to have palm trees.
Let's make an apple orchard right here in the middle of the desert. It'll be fine.
Hey, the desert can do what it wants, buddy. You're victim blaming the desert.
The desert didn't do what it wanted. Well, it did just now. It reclaimed a whole bunch of stuff. I'm just saying, like, I feel bad. I legitimately feel bad for the people who, because it's not like they just started it. They've been planting and watering and doing things in Southern California for the last 200 years, since the freaking
gold rush, 1849.
They were trying to make it a more hospitable place. But when you move from Vermont to California and you're like, oh, this is kind of like home, that's probably the wrong answer if it was a desert at one point. And then if you stop sprinkling it, you stop giving it water, and you're not like, and nobody says, hey, all these dead plants, shouldn't we maybe get rid of them?
Yeah. And by the way, you have an El Nino come through and you dump the most rain in 50 years, that it's been there. And that's normal for a desert. A desert will get monsoons. Right. This desert will get an El Nino.
Yeah, they call it a rainy season most places.
Right.
Yep.
So
yeah, but that doesn't but there are certain plants, they're called succulents. They live in deserts where they get a little rain, and then they keep that rain for a long time. You know what succulents don't do very well? Light on fire. And if they do, doesn't take very long for them to burn out.
Yeah.
It would be different if
my marine biologist wife says Pacific Palisades is not a desert.
Do what?
She says Pacific Palisades is not a desert.
Well, not now. It's not. What is it?
Well, I think he's probably referring. I lived in Palm Springs for 3 years, and I can kind of see the frustration of Becky, because they do. I don't know if you've been to Palm Springs in the summer, right? If you're walking around, there's a bunch of golf courses. There should not be golf courses, in that desert, right?
Should.
It's just being pumped, filled with water. You go to a restaurant, there's water being shot out of the ceiling at you, right? There's like a percentage of humidity that gets that's artificial in that entire town for that specific reason, and it only comes from one place, and that's the Colorado River. There's this whole like aridification of the West. Sorry, not trying to go into like the soapbox of it, but like there's a
no, it's the trash talk. It's a dumpster fire. You talk about whatever you want.
I wrote an interesting paper on the Colorado River is actually that whole basin's drying out for a reason because the Colorado River
It filled
can't
up
supply
last year
it.
during the El Nino.
Right, but before that, it was
Nino.
so low that they weren't actually going to be able to produce electricity in the next 5 years because they weren't able to control certain aspects of the water going through. But those El Nino cycles are going to be, rare. And then you do have all that brush that does get, that does grow under that water when you guys got all that water.
Yeah, and to the point, to the Palisades, it's lush there. It's that goes more into the arson aspect of things, to where like this was started to where this wind was going to burn everything down regardless, and they're going to burn all this expensive property down, especially these iconic mobile homes. They're all gone, right? And so like, what are you going to build there? Who owns that property?
Iconic,
right? Like,
you guys got iconic mobile homes?
There is in Malibu and Palisades. You go up there, they were pretty cool. Like, just it's just part of that beachfront. It is what it is.
We call those different things in Alabama, not iconic.
But then the other policies that the socialist dictator Newsom has done was, when I was trying to buy a house out here, it was hard to get a VA loan because of fire insurance. None of the major carriers. So here's some disinformation. The major carriers aren't leaving now because of this fire. They had already left. They left like 4 years ago, right? They left because, one, they weren't doing anything to prevent the fires. And then two, they said that if you lost your property, the law that California passed was that they had to pay the entire value of the property. And the insurance company's like, no. We'll rebuild the home. That's what's insured. If you want us to do that, we'll raise the rates. Well, then they put it in the law that they couldn't raise the rates. Well, they just left. They're like, well, okay. That's Governor Newsom. Welcome to capitalism. Just the same thing you did to Elon Musk. You ran him out of California. Bye-bye. Like, I'll just go to Texas. There you have it. So, yeah.
Have you guys seen that Netflix documentary on there's a fire in what was the name of it? I can't think of the name of the actual town, but it was in Northern California. And just the way that the fire actually took the town itself. There was at one point like an entire family laying down in a parking lot, and they covered them with like fire sheets and then let the fire roll over them because they couldn't evacuate them anyway. I can't think of the name of that fire, that documentary, but it's really good. I highly recommend it. When I figure out the name of it, I will shout it out. But those fires, they move quick, and I couldn't imagine being that close to it, trying to manage it. So that's a lot of heat to have to deal with on a daily basis. I got a lot of respect for the guys out there right now, for sure.
Well, that's the current events. Interesting to see what some of y'all think about that. So if you want to throw it in the chat, feel free. Go ahead, write it. But again, to the constants, not the variables. The constants are a lot of people lost their homes, and another constant is there's a lot of really, really good people, to include my brother-in-law, who was working overtime, getting, pulled joint agencies. His town wasn't in trouble, but, they pulled all the cops from his town to go help. A lot of cops and firemen out there, and the pilots and everything, watching that on TV, watching them coordinate how they're doing the drops and stuff like that is pretty impressive to watch that. But yeah, those are the constants, that there's people that are going to be
your Pathfinder skills, Nick.
I was thinking about that. It's like, bro, I could control like 2 of those aircraft. Not those four,
Well,
but
the way
those
you
two.
pass Pathfinder school, maybe just don't do it.
Those four, I don't know what those are, but those two, I got them.
Yeah, I can handle it.
I passed the Buddy Beckwith Pathfinder school, so I'm solid.
Yeah. The crazy thing is, like, so what's going to happen with, you said like the Palisades had like 12,000 homes destroyed. How many more homeless people can LA absorb? They've already got 84,000. Like,
well, that's the other problem.
Nowhere.
The systematic thing is they slashed the firemen and the LA County water budgets by only like a 2% cut. Yeah, out of $1 billion, right? And then the budget for homeless people was 1.2 billion in LA County. And it's like
a lot of them.
Like maybe some other stuff, but it is what it is. Again, that's where I hate that linear thinking of this is why this happened. Now we can point down to if it's arson that it happened because this douchebag did that, right? But there's a lot of things that need to get looked at and get fixed. And no big deal. I haven't brought it up in a while. I haven't said it in a lot of shows, but I do have a master's from the Yale to Southwest. And from UTEP, right? And in that program in public administration, you go over disaster relief. And when you go through that class and you go through all of the stakeholders and players in a city that have to be in line to handle an evacuation or handle an emergency and then preparing for one, that is a daunting task. And again, it's okay to say somebody failed in leadership. It's okay. You failed, right? Like, what did you fail on? Oh, we could be nice to him. No. Like Buddy was saying earlier, we can question this. We can find out why, right?
I think for the rest of the country, it really does advertise how screwed up the policies and the politics locally in that area are. But the lesson that a lot of people should take away that don't live there is your local elections matter. Like, who you vote for matters. Like, yeah, if you only vote every 4 years because it's the most politicized election, then
because MTV told you to vote.
Yeah, then you probably have an issue. But if you're not paying attention to the problems in your area and the potential risk and potential problems and what your people are doing about it, and
I was excited to vote in California for the first time because there was 700 propositions on the ballot. These people are crazy out here. So I'm reading through all these things, and my favorite one, it passed 80-20 or 70-30, that we're going to start making people felons again for breaking into businesses and stealing all their stuff. The fact that this had to be voted on.
Wait, they weren't felons before?
No, they took it out. Said that everything under $10,000 and then repeat criminals, they're not felons, right? So it passed 70-30, 80-20, something like that. I just want to know who the 20% are that no, I really like that. That was a good plan. It was really working. No, it wasn't. People were getting fired for stopping criminals, right? No, you can't stop that person. They're just doing what they're allowed to do.
Yeah.
Okay. But hey, I'm gonna jump into the Book of Earl because it's been a while. It's been a while since you got the knowledge. Since you got the truth, right? And again, those of you who are watching for the first time, I appreciate it. But I started a podcast with Dave. Started a fight show with Joe and them, and just because I love hearing myself talk. And I do have words of wisdom that everybody should live by. And most of them are from my own trials and tribulations, right? They're things that I have done wrong and have noticed in people's reactions to what I have done wrong or done right. But this one comes from chapter 7, verse 18. And thou must deny the lie, that it's easier said than done. All right. That really, really bothers me because we do things every day. Doing is actually the easy part. It's saying that I need to do something and understanding that you need to do something and verbalizing it that I need to make a change is the hard part. And so in the sub scrolls, the Dead Sea Scrolls of the Book of Earl, there's more if you dig into it. And I've said this before in some Book of Earls, but you're not judging somebody who's being harmful to you or harmful to others by telling them to stop. If they're being harmful to themselves, you're not judging them. However, that person or group of people, whether or not they take your opinion, shows you how much they value you. To where I'm not judging you for saying you should probably stop stealing, right? And like one of the best lines of any movie is quit breaking the law, asshole, right? And liar, liar, like any legal advice, like stop, right? So yeah, that's the Book of Earl. It's a short one. It's not judging to be your brother's keeper, right? It's being a friend. And nobody on this planet is perfect. Nobody. So for you to say, well, you can't judge, you're not perfect. I'm not judging. Like you've already judged yourself. You've already judged everybody around you by doing what you're doing. You've said that they have to fucking deal with it. You were the judge. I'm telling you that it hurt people. And you should probably stop. Right? And if you take that, cool. If not, cool beans. So, but I want you to deny the lie that it's easier said than done. It's easier to do. It's harder to admit it and start doing. That's what's the hard part. What do you guys think?
Easier said than done, you know?
It's a good one.
Yeah, I think that you're onto something, but it's more like I don't know. The way I think about it is that it's from what you were talking about, which seems oddly specific, by the way, that it's hard to tell people the hard truths. Like sometimes you have to love people enough to tell them the truth, and then when they hear the truth, they have to be strong enough to take that and reflect on themselves and then do the hard work that it comes with changing or figuring themselves out. But to tell somebody that their actions have consequences and that their actions have effect on other people is, I mean, that's how until fairly recently how the world kind of worked. Yeah, you weren't. It was, and people called them, like you said, judgy. But yeah, just because somebody says, "Hey, what you're doing is wrong," doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't mean that they're. I mean, they're judging,
It
but
doesn't mean that I'll do the same thing wrong.
yeah, just means they're making an observation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that your actions have consequences. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Easier said than
But
done.
yeah, it's just, and this kind of goes to like the New Year's resolution thing where, and again, we talk about it. We talk about this with veteran suicide and, you know, PTSD, to where it's your demon. It's yours. It's not mine. I have my own, right? If I want my friends to help me with it, I have to say it. I have to say, I'm struggling with this, Dave. Hey, check me on this once in a while. Right? Freaking throw a rock at my head if I start doing this, please. Right? Like, fight this demon with me. Right? Or you try to fight it yourself and see how it goes.
On 2 minutes worth of more reflection on what you were saying, also, Nick, is that easier said than done is also a kind of a cliche that people use when they know that what they have to do
It's not going
to be enjoyable. Yeah. So it's kind of an out for them to be like, yeah, I didn't do it. It's easier said than done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but yes, it is easier said than, like, saying things is a lot easier
It's
than
automatically telling yourself you can't accomplish this either.
But-
You know,
but
like
that
it's
doesn't mean that you still shouldn't do it.
See, I think it's easier to say that you can't do it.
yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. It's like if somebody asks you, "Hey, you coming over on Wednesday to hang out?" I might be there. Like, well, I might means more than likely you're not going to be there. You know,
Yeah.
and easier said than done is the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that say that term and use it widely, and it's like, oh, so that means you're not going to accomplish that, or you can't accomplish that, or you don't feel like you can accomplish that. You know, like, yeah.
Well, I think on the glass half full side of it is, easier said than done from somebody who may have already done it, right? Like somebody who's already been through that process, right? And then for them to say, "Hey, I started in here and now I'm here." So, dude, it's easier to talk about it than actually, than having to go through it and do it. But hey, this is what I did. Sometimes I look at it like that too, but I think it depends on the context of what the doing is, right? For sure. I'm much more inclined to ditch out on a Friday night if I want to stay in, and I'll say maybe, right?
Yeah. And then again, a good friend just says, "I'm busy today. I'm kind of being lazy. I'm just going to sit on my ass."
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
make it. Yeah.
Okay. And then when your friend, after the 17th time you say that to them, says, "Maybe not do that this weekend. Let's go." Right? Like that. Just, come on.
Well, that's a good friend. Yeah, just
exactly.
recognizing something that someone said and getting out and not being in your own, insulating yourself.
And the old saying, people in glass houses sink ships, right? So no, I just watched Boondock Saints, so I had to throw that
Nice.
out there. But yeah, again, it's like I'm not throwing stones at anybody. At anyone. Right? It's just like, but if I do decide to, hey, this is what I saw you do yesterday, wasn't cool, doesn't mean I'm fucking perfect.
Right. Yeah, none of us are, unfortunately.
Yeah. But hey, buddy, did you read the script?
Yeah, I'm introducing.
I'm super excited. Yeah.
And I'm pretty proud to introduce Matt Vitarelli. So we all know Matt from when we were in the 82nd together.
Yes.
Matt ended up getting out, going and doing kind of bigger and better things. Working in the medical field, being a CA, Reserve National Guard fella.
Is he a nurse?
Aren't
you a nurse? Yeah.
Yeah.
In the proctology ward, I heard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But not unlike us and unlike other people, Matt has definitely had a little bit of a roller coaster. He's had his highs that have been really high. He's had his lows that have been really low, and he's kind of coming on the show today to talk about some of those highs, some of those lows, and then what he's had to do to come back from the lowest of lows. And Matt's done some questionable things before. And I think that the one thing that I've always taken away from Matt is that you've got very few people in your life that when everything is down, they're going to be there for you. And I know that Matt is one of those people for me. I'll always be one of those people for Matt, and being around him for the journey that he's gone through has it's been a very, it's been sad. It's been something that's made me super proud of him at the same time. And it's just proof that, people are people. They have problems. They don't have problems. But Matt is always trying to make himself into a better person. So welcome, Matt. And
thanks, buddy.
All yours, man.
Hey, thanks, buddy. Thanks, Nick, David. Yeah, I really appreciate what you guys are doing with the Veteran Trash Talk and reaching out. And, I don't know if you guys talked about it. But recently we all kind of collectively had a loss, right? And I reached out. I'm a very empathic person. I found in my later years I've become very empathic, and to know that somebody struggled, somebody went down that dark into that cave and had to deal with that demon and didn't know how to, and essentially ended up taking their lives, and I know how that feels. I know the moment of what that feels like, and that there's definitely there's another way, right? And I hope I don't get choked up and in this, and if I start rambling on, because I do have that Midwestern syndrome, stop me and ask questions.
From
But
Detroit.
yeah, back from Detroit, and like I said, I joined, like Becky said, I joined in 2000, joined the Army in 2003. In 2004, went to the 82nd Airborne Division, 2nd to 505th Parachute Infantry Regiment. Was in Bravo Company, and I met yeah, the B team. We'll talk about that later. No, so and I had the opportunity to, Beck's been there, since I've been a private. Yeah, honestly, since
Pretty well, all of us.
and we talk about good leaders, we talk about people who look at the entire person, not just like what that person's doing from the 9 to 5. One day I came in. Remember we did vehicle inspections, right? And I just want to talk about Becky for a second, because this kind of leads to why I'm here today, essentially. But we did vehicle inspections, man. I came in, my tires were completely bald on my car, completely bald. I was a dumbass private, right? Well, I don't have any money, He took me to Sam's Club, got a credit card, put the 4 tires on the card. While they were putting the tires on, the electricity went down out in Sam's Club. So Becky loaded the tires up in the car, took us over to the auto shop on post, and then taught me how to actually, change tires on my car. Right. And then I set up a payment plan with him. And that's the kind of like leader that he is. Like, he could have fucking checked that off and said, hey, whatever, he'll get tires when he gets tires. Who gives a shit? Right. But again, like, that just speaks to like the type of person that he is. And he's been that to me. To this day, I call him in all sorts of moods, right? Highs, lows, all that stuff. So, that's kind of how long I've known Becky, since I was basically a child. And Nick and Dave, you guys, I think we met in Beanock Phase 2, right? Spent a bunch of time on the golf course together. And then, man, I really, we hung out a ton back before we deployed that second time. And then you guys, we all just kind of split ways, I think, after that second deployment.
As the Army does to you. Yep.
As the Army does to you, right? Man, it's great seeing you guys. Great chatting with you. And let's get into it, right? We talk about pain. We talk about dealing with that demon, right? And Dave, I love your intro and talking about like that is something that we have to face. And it doesn't matter what you've seen, what you've done in life, right? Whether you've been a primary care provider or special forces operator, we see things every day. Working through that, leaving the Army, joining, I went to college and became a nurse. And I started doing that, and I really, really, really enjoyed it. I started working in the ICU. Life was great. I met an amazing woman. She was going through med school. We got married. I had a kid from a previous, previous engagement, I guess you could call it. So in college, life was great. I struggled with being a part-time dad and going to school full time. For the most part, I had a lot of resilience after leaving the 82nd. Right. I started to make friends when I went to school. I was doing all these great things, met a lot of cool people. And then somewhere in life, life just got a little boring, right? I started to not be as fulfilled as I thought I was going to be, even getting the things that I wanted. And I want to, and Becky, keep me on track if I start to lose it here. But from doing that, I started working in ICU. I really enjoyed it. I really liked helping people. But I was dealing with a lot of death, like a lot. And then my wife was finished with med school and she wanted to go to residency out in California. So we moved out to sunny, beautiful California during COVID. And I started in an ICU there. And, the death just kind of increased and increased. And it just got to the point where I was anxious pretty much all the time. Like I was dealing with moving across the country. I was dealing with, working in the ICU. There's a lot of stress and issues, and we can go into that. But I really started to struggle with it. I really started to struggle with who I was as a person and where I wanted to go with life, because I knew what I was doing was not fulfilling me at all. It was just constantly taking from me, right? And this is kind of where I found out that I'm super empathic, right? I can think and really feel like the energy in a room. I can feel how other people feeling, and then I actually can, kind of feel that what that person's feeling, and dealing with a lot of palliative patients, dealing with a lot of patients who are dying from COVID or from other comorbidities related to COVID. I just kind of lost it. And I started with like not really sleeping. And there was just a lot of different signs that I was ignoring with my body. Like I would wake up constantly stressed. I was sweating out of my armpit, and my right armpit would just constantly sweat. And I was like, what the hell is this? Right. I'd go to the doctor and be like, hey, I need deodorant, some sort of strong deodorant, because I keep like just water's pouring out of my left armpit. Not realizing that I was like in a constant state of panic and a constant state of anxiety. And then I started, using alcohol, drugs to really cope with that. And I don't want to go super in depth into that, because that's like a whole trauma thing in itself. What's that?
Would you say cope or mask it?
I think it was mostly to cope and to really step away from
Get out of reality.
I was like really dealing with, right? Because I think when there's a lot of great books I want to talk about, or that I've read, that kind of helped me. And again, like I am not a professional, right? I went to nursing school. I took a semester of psychology. I think it's super important to find out what works for you in any situation, right? Like whether it's mental, whether it's physical, it's what you're eating. What I do working out is different from what Nick's going to do working out, and to get results, right? That's how I think, right? Like I think it's very individual, especially when it comes to mental health. Man, damn, you guys are big, strong boys. But I think
that
the
holidays, this is all.
I gotcha.
Cheese. Yeah,
I gotcha.
No, it's super important for you to share, though, because like we've had several individuals on the show that have gone through stuff, and the road to recovery is different for everybody. So anybody that comes on just has their own tools and their own way on how they got better. So you know, you don't need to be a doctor for that. So I think it's just amazing.
No,
to share.
totally.
And
totally.
It's also hard to share that stuff.
It is.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. No, I'm applauding and saying I appreciate it. I'm not very important.
You guys should fight.
Yeah. Fuck you, buddy.
I feel like there's some animosity left. There's something that needs to come out. But no, I know Vito from a past life as well, as he explained. And when Buddy told me what was going on, there's some people you say, oh, I'm not too surprised about that, but I was surprised about that. Like I was pretty freaking surprised about that. Like, really.
I think that was a huge driver for me too, right? Because I really worked really hard to get to where I was. Like I inherently think I'm a good person, right? And that was a huge struggle for me for a really long time, right? I beat myself up over every little thing, and I'm sure other people do that. I can only speak to how I act and how I feel and think, but I beat myself up. I overanalyze. Becky can probably attest to that. Me calling him like, dude, like maybe I'm, going through different things in my life. but that was a big thing for me, right? Like I did all of these things that I was supposed to do. Like I did my time in the Army and I did well, right? I didn't get into a huge amount of trouble. I got into, my fair amount. But even looking back into my Army time, like looking back into those times on active duty in the 82nd, right? Beck was pretty much there every step of the way too. He can attest, like I was making these errors and mistakes well before any of this stuff, right? Like, so this stuff, a lot of like how I act and a lot of how I think is a lot of it's pre-Army. So I can't really, blame it on the fact that I, was traumatized from some sort of military experience, though there were times that obviously we've all been overseas. Any of that can be traumatizing for anybody. But in the sense that like I did that time, I did okay. I got out, I went straight to school. I did 4 years in college. I did what I wanted to do. I met the perfect person. And now I was like hiding the secret, right? I was at the time when everything kind of blew up, I was a first sergeant in a CA unit, like an airborne CA unit, doing pretty good. I was pretty happy, right? Like I had a close friend from the 82nd that was living close by in California. And overall, like life is great. But I lacked that purpose. I was struggling with drive and I was hiding all of this stuff because I didn't want people to know that like I was struggling. And because of this facade of whatever you see at this face level, right? Like whatever I wanted you to see is what you saw. And, growing up, like I definitely was a, chameleon in a respect. Like I wanted to be a part of, different groups. And I idolized hanging out with like Buddy and Becky, and I idolized hanging out with you guys. Like it was like the best part of, I look back at those times and those were amazing. Right. But to admit that like, hey, I did this stuff, I'm in this position, I have these things, and now I have to say, oh, I fucked up and I failed. Right. And that was like what my mentality is I failed at life. End of story. Right. We're told like, wear a PT belt. Your soldier doesn't wear a PT belt, you're going to get him killed. Right. That was like my mentality overseas. And I've talked to Becky about that. And we've added some comments to that. But I think that like the overall thing is that I was really struggling with the fact that like I built this perfect life, and now me internally I was destroying it, but I wasn't telling anybody about it. Right. Until it came to a certain point, it was pretty bad. And
so you were doing and not saying.
I was doing a lot and not saying. And I remember, sitting in the parking lot working a night shift, and like I was in Palm Springs. There's like 37 rehabs. There's like 250 meetings a day there. It's an insane place for recovery, right? And I'm, a nurse, and I'm struggling, and I'm struggling with these different things, and I can't. And if I admit to that, there's certain levels of which that you're afraid to say, right? Because you know how it's going to affect your job, how it's going to affect your life. But that's really what I wanted to come on and say is you don't know until you do it. And it goes to your point, it is easier said than done when you have to take that first step. When I'm looking at my phone at 3:00 in the morning going, shh, place called Phoenix Rising. All right, how much does this place cost? Because I'm trying to figure out how to pay for it out of pocket. So my insurance won't find it. I'm just trying to figure out all of these different scenarios other than just saying, hey, I have a problem and I need help. And it came to a head where I actually called one night. I had an issue and I was really struggling, and I called a good friend of ours, and he came, and he was grabbed me up basically and kind of made it more of a, at that point there's no secret, right? Once he knew, I knew Becky was gonna know, and I knew, and then I think that eventually my wife called you, right, Beck? Yeah. Never really meeting you.
Yeah.
Well, and she was super scared, and that was really hard.
Can Buddy dig into that? Can Buddy dig into that?
Yeah. Sorry, it might be a little. Yeah, go ahead, buddy.
Dig into what? Which
yeah, the wife called you, who you haven't really talked to before.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, first of all, no matter what Vito has done or been into, I love the guy, always will. But his wife called me for the first time, and then kind of talking to her and kind of sharing what she had been through and what they were going through together. You will never find a person who probably is luckier than Matt Vitarelli. Like, um, you talk about a ride or die. Like, he found a an amazing partner with his wife. Um, but the big thing that's always stood out to me, especially with you, Vito, was always that it was kind of like um, you were so successful in everything that you had tried, that it was like your trigger was always when you thought that you were on autopilot and had everything handled. That's when things kind of started spiraling and going downhill. Which when you hear about other people, a lot of the ones that you hear about, and I think it's a pretty important message to get out to other people, like like the movies and the books and stories that you read are these people that are generally at their lowest point in their spiral, and everything is going bad, and they're on the streets, and they're addicted to whatever they're addicted to, whether it's alcohol or some type of drug, whatever. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Their life sucks, and they're drinking and doing drugs. But what we don't pay attention to very often is the people that are very successful, and they're in the top of that spiral before they get to be like, you don't just wake up homeless. Like, that's that's the end of
Process.
the spiral, not the beginning of it. And it seems like, and I'm no psychologist, but it seems like Matt always kind of he kind of fought like an imposter syndrome type thing. Like, he was successful at everything he did, but it was never because you thought that, like, you studied hard. It was just that you lucked into it. Or it wasn't that you were a good person, so you met a good person, you lucked into it. You know what I mean? Um, and until you like, I think until you really feel like, hey, like, this wasn't luck. Like, this was me. I did all these things to make my life good, and like, I deserve where I'm at. I've earned what I'm doing. Like, I've earned the life that I have. It's hard to reconcile that with, getting up there and then, being like, well, I don't deserve this. I need to punish myself with, whatever. And that's always kind of stood out to me. But what is amazing about Matt's story also is, you know, Matt did, and I think he'll be comfortable talking about that. It's not like Matt made a phone call, and the next day everything was fine. Like, he literally has done years and years of work, and he's gone up 5 or 6 steps and then gone back down 10 steps, and had to crawl his way back up and then fall down and then crawl his way back up. And the one thing that's always been a constant is his wife's always been there for him. His friends have always his core of friends has always been there for him. And you know, there was a time where we were, I mean, I'll admit it, there was a time where we were blunt on the razor's edge of being mean to Matt. Like, there were a lot of very hard truths that we had to share with him as his friends that weren't comfortable, weren't fun to talk about. There were times where we're like, "Hey, man, if you don't get any help, don't call. Don't like when you want to do the right thing, when you want to help yourself, we're right here for you." But and it's hard to make that stand with somebody that you love. But again, when you look at the fact that has he stumbled? 100%. But has he always gotten back up and dusted himself off and kept trying? Also 100%. And I think Matt, that's probably a good thing, a great thing for you to talk about, and maybe a good segue into, like, when we got that first call, that things were bad, you know, it didn't take very long before the community kind of, and this community, to be exact, like, kind of jumped in and got some help that you really needed. But also to talk about kind of the struggles of, I don't want to use the word failing. We've talked about it before. Failing is when you quit and you just stop trying. Um, Having setbacks is one thing, but it's not failure. It's a setback.
Right.
So if you want to talk about that, I think that would be a great message for other people to hear, is how you come back when you've been knocked out.
Sure. Yeah. So, after that call, it wasn't, and it's not like I was like, my wife was calling you were chatting with her, and I was like in another room, just sitting calmly on the bed. It was emotional. It was an emotional point to where when I called you, because I was, um, he, so addiction, it actually changes who a person is on a certain level, right? It gets to a point where your thought process is not that's Matt, right? Like, that is not Matt that you're talking to, or that is not Matt who is going through that. It's a version of me. It's not a version of me that I, ever really wanted anybody to see. So, especially I didn't want my longtime, friend, leader, somebody who I looked up to like see that, I failed. So I remember, calling you. We chatted. I had to like remove the snot from my face as they were bubbling out of my nose. I remember that pretty clearly. But at that point, like, you and I don't know about using names, but you, Chris and Craig, really, you started talking to my wife and about what needs to happen next, or what does that even look like, right? Like, do we just toss his ass in a hospital? Like, what do we do, right? Like, because and again, like, my wife's a medical professional, right? She's a medical professional. She sees this stuff all the time. She sees people who come into the emergency department all the time, and yet here she is having to deal with it face to face. It's like a very different aspect for anybody to deal with. And but so you guys really kind of came up with a great plan. I came out to see you in San Diego, me and Craig. We chatted a little bit, and that's where I saw Dave and Dave. You were there, and Nick, and we chatted, and that at that point, I was not.
Yeah, you met the Ultimate Sacrifice boys.
That was
yes.
You met the people from the Ultimate
That was
Sacrifice.
a connection there.
Thank you. That's where we were going. So I met Mike Doty, and
I will say this was kind of a hard thing. I know it was hard for you, and I know where your mindset was, but the Ultimate Sacrifice wasn't your first choice. Like, you tried to do this other program.
I did
locally, and like,
I did. So I stayed locally. Right. Yeah, you're right. So I stayed locally, and I was like, this place is right here. My wife was going away for a month. I thought that, like, I thought that's the problem. Like, I was in that mindset, and I was in a mindset that wasn't me. That wasn't like that person who was under control. And yet I was trying to control things, and it didn't turn out well. Right. So,
again, to jump in, like, we all knew that was a bad decision. And I think we tried to say that it was a bad decision, but a failure on our part was not to be more like, not to literally say, you're a fucking idiot. Stop.
Right.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I would say that was probably a misstep, failure on our part. But it is what it is. Go ahead.
Right. I mean, you guys were doing the best you could from where you guys were. Again, we were doing Zoom conference calls with all four of us, and at that point, that it's the word is it felt a little infantilizing. Like I felt like I was being
Nobody knows what
treated
that
like
means.
like I was being treated like I was being treated like a child, like I was being treated like an infant, like you guys were, suddenly you guys would like walked in, and this was my mindset at the time, completely irrational, right? Because that's exactly the state that I was in, was completely irrational. And that is where so a lot of those hard truths and hard conversations had to come in. And I remember talking to you on the phone and hanging up on you, and back, and those were hard things. And I learned a lot about myself, and I learned a lot more about my friends around me, and the support that they were basically what they were willing to give up in order to make sure that I was going to be okay, or at least on the path to being okay. Right. So then, we went to San Diego, and I was like, I got to do something. I met Mike and Mike Doty from the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation. And at that point, everything was already spun up. You had already done all the work. So I sent in an email. And at this time, I found out that my dad was diagnosed with mesothelioma, which is a pretty shitty lung cancer to have. And, it's like one of those things where you're like given months. But, I was down in North Carolina, and, I got on a flight, went to New Jersey, and they put me in a place called Soba in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And I went on lockdown. It was great. It wasn't. It was an experience that is hard for any adult to be, again. Like you don't have phones, you're not having any of this stuff. And I really hesitated to kind of talk about this, but like it was one of the clearest times I've ever thought. Like I didn't have a phone in front of me. I had a schedule, right? Like I was kind of going back into this like structure of my life, right? I started reading books again. I started learning more about like myself and how I can operate, right? Because I fully allowed myself to go, I am not in control. I just don't have this mental capacity to make these decisions appropriately, if that makes any sense. I'm not like able to say, hey, I'm going to go here and do this, right? But obviously Becky and some of my friends had to take over and say, hey, look, this is obviously the best choice for you, right? Like this is where we're going to go. This is where we're going to put you, or this is where you should go, right? But again, no phone, really taking some time to figure myself out. You're not really talking to people. It's interesting. You're doing a lot of work on yourself. Started meditating. Started working some programs that I thought that would fit into what fit me essentially, right? Because there's a lot of options when it comes to recovery. And so I did that, right? And I spent a good amount of time in New Jersey, and I started working towards being a better person, right? Not being a better person, but being clean, being in the moment, living in every second. And I got the opportunity to like be there for my dad, who was dying, like, right? He had massive surgery. They removed part of his lung at this point. I was there to like be his nurse, right? And again, at this time, like, I want to say that I'm super fortunate, right? To be able to lean on these people, to be able to lean on the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation. And so, because, they, I didn't pay for any of that stuff, right? That was like something
what did they do? What did they do?
Right. I was there for almost 2 months.
Let me stop you real quick, Vito, because we know this. We partner with Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation since their inception. But there's a lot of people on YouTube right now. We've kind of bounced into the algo, and there's a lot of people commenting on YouTube saying, hey, first time here. Hey, we're Veteran Trash Talk, Gruntworks, and we are here to promote veteran-owned businesses, stories of like Vito sharing right now, battle buddy that's went through some trials and tribulations, and he's talking about how he got through it, how he's getting through it. So lots of success stories, failures, but all ultimately geared toward, lowering the veteran suicide rate, first responder suicide rate, hell, the suicide rate.
Yeah.
Right. Like just by getting people to talk and showing success, showing failure, and where you grow from it. But hey, just for all you watching for the first time, thanks. Thanks for tuning in. And Vito, tell us what Ultimate Sacrifice does. The Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation.
So I can tell you what they did for me. They assessed me based off of my need, right? I was having some serious issues. They partner with an organization in New Jersey, a nonprofit treatment facility called SOBA in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And it's a pretty intimate setting, right? You're basically living in a facility with other folks like yourself, and you're learning how to manage and deal with that. Initially, when you're done doing anything and you realize that you need to make a change, there's an emotional balance that needs to happen, right? Your body needs to come into some sort of like equilibrium, because if you're tilted to one side, you're not having a great time. So that basically what we did is we reprogrammed our lives, right? Not reprogrammed our lives, but we talked about what was going on. We talked about ways to manage how we were feeling in the moment, right? The different symptoms and side effects of what some people went through were pretty intense, and different things that people were dealing with. But you had these stories, you shared these stories, and that's basically the goal of SOBA and of the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation, right? And maybe Buddy can speak to a little bit more, but I
don't know. I think you knew, but you really didn't know as far as the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation, kind of how that went. But I got in touch with Mike and talked to him, and then as soon as Vito was ready is when they kind of kicked into action. But when he emailed them, they paid for and they were willing to pay to fly somebody out to pick him up and then fly him to the rehab facility, get him into the rehab facility, do his cleanup, do his inpatient, and then any outpatient stuff that he needed that was free of charge for him. And then it was like that.
Instantaneous.
And the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation is a great organization. And it's not a fly by night kind of have like a half-assed doctor. They've got like one of the leading recovery specialists in the country works for SOBA. But they're also run by veterans, and they give a shit about what we go through, and they've been there in the same conditions, so they kind of know. But it was all kind of no strings attached kind of deal. And I know that it relieved a lot of the worry that Vito had and his wife had about how they were going to pay us for stuff, because when you look at people that are like, wife's a doctor, he's a nurse, they live in Palm Springs, they must have money just shooting out of their ass. You say that, but if they have an addiction problem, there's not a lot of money there.
No, yeah, we had Ben Owen on the show that talks about losing about $16 million in 6 months.
Yeah. So that is a worry. And then, it's easier said than done, kind of back into that. It's easy for people that aren't in that position to say, well, just stop.
Well, that's a doing. That's a doing. It's easier for them to do that.
It's also easier for them to say, well, just go get help, without thinking about.
It's also the lack of comprehension on what that person is actually going through and all the ramifications and everything that comes with it. Like
like Nick talks about it all the time with like linear thinking, right? Like, yes, you have problem A.
Mm-hmm.
Stop doing the thing that makes problem A happen and
Right.
everything else will be fine. But you don't see that problem A is a problem, but there are 15 other problems
Mm-hmm.
that are associated with getting help, with getting the actual help that you needed. Like the first recovery program that he went to that was local, Vito, like he said, he did that because it was convenient. It was convenient for him to do that one. It was close. It was like he could stay local. He could go home if he needed to. He could, like, at one point, I think you even said you had somebody had to take care of the dog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it was every other thing. And the point is with, and even with like the SOBA thing, the thing, they took him all the way across the country out of the environment that he was in, to give, and sometimes that has to be the thing, but you also have to help those people to deal with the consequences of traveling to the other side of the country for 2 months. Like,
Mhm.
they still have jobs, they still have dogs, they still have a household that has to be managed, they have relationships, they have all this other stuff, and it's trying to convince those people that the person that they are taking care of that stuff is not the person that needs to be there taking care of that stuff, and they need a healthy person there to do all that. And the only way
Yeah.
to be healthy is to take that hit right then and go somewhere and receive the help, that makes them the people that can be counted on to do all the things that need to get done. And then Vito, if you want to talk about like how difficult not only recovery was, but like staying
Yeah,
sober.
sure. Um, yeah, and I get it's different for everybody. And you're right. I made a poor decision because again, I was thinking for myself, which isn't always the best, right? Especially when you're an addict, because what you're eventually doing subconsciously is feeding what you want, right? Or what that addict part of your mind wants. The thing locally was probably some sort of, again, I think of it as like my addict brain saying, hey man, it's going to be good, right? Like you can stay local, you can take care of all these things, you can make all these justifications for this stuff. But really getting out of, and that's one thing that if anybody is struggling with addiction, if you have the ability to get away from that, and it's not a forever sense, because there's a famous saying, wherever you go, there you are, right? You still have to take care of what's going on inside, but getting away from those triggers, and it was really easy towards the end for me to really screw up my life. So getting out of there was great. And staying sober, continuing to stay sober, getting sober, it's not easy. It's not this task where it's just like, oh yeah, I've made this decision. I am gonna do these specific things, and then everything's gonna be great, right? Like all I got to do is this, and this. No. There's a process depending on which recovery route you want to go, whether it's the Alcohol Anonymous, the 12-step route, as people call it, whether it's Narcotics Anonymous, Alcohol's Anonymous, Cocaine's Anonymous. There's a refuge recovery, and there's a Buddhist mentality towards recovery that people can go towards. There's smart recovery. There's a lot of options out there. I did the 12-step program, and initially it takes a really deep dive into you, right? So first off, it's about finding, and a lot of people get thrown off with the word God, right? And I did, and that was a struggle for me, right? Acknowledging that there's something, a higher power, something greater than you, that you can take that demon and you can rest it on that shelf, right? You can say, hey, like, I'm struggling, these are the things that I'm currently struggling with. I can't hold on to this. I need to give this to somebody, right? And it's
Yeah,
hard for
sorry.
me to mentally, it was hard for me at that time to mentally wrap my head around that. I grew up in the Catholic Church through confirmation, right? So, religion and God and the higher power really were, it was all one for me. And I really had a hard time picking that stuff apart because the way that you're raised, right? Like I was raised in a very Catholic church, and then my stepdad was a Baptist minister or Baptist pastor for a great portion of my life. So Sundays were like, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. Every Sunday you're there. And it was just my existence in religion and all that stuff really was hard. So really trying to understand that, I would get tripped up on these things, right? Finding a sponsor, finding somebody to tell these things to, right? You go through each step, and you write out, depending on which program you go through, you write out, some of your deepest, darkest secrets, and then you have to tell that to another human being. It's pretty easy, I think, for a lot of us to talk like that. I think that, for I can tell, I bet Becky knows pretty much everything about me. You know what I mean? But then again, Becky would run around with his pants off on patrol bases and stuff like that with just his boots on. So I know a lot about Becky too.
It was, by the way, just so everybody knows, it was not co-ed at the time. And
yeah, it was not co-ed infantry at the time.
So it was gay.
No, it's not. It's a way
to be gay, buddy.
Man.
I appreciate you coming on the show live.
Everybody knows that the best way to get rid of is through your bottom.
And we had the silver bullet, man. We had Craig, dude. So
we did. That was.
Where do you think I learned most of it from?
Exactly. Craig
was the guy when I was a private that would walk around with a headlamp as a thong, with a keg of beer on the rucksack straps that he had, like up and down the hallways.
And he was a massive individual too,
like a fucking chem light stuck.
It's a big dude. You couldn't just like beat him up and tell him to get out of your room or whatever. It's like, am I getting raped right now? This is what it is.
Dude was nuts, man.
I could either accept it or like go out swinging, but it's a big dude. Like,
sloppy.
No, I know we went down a fun tangent there that Trash Talk always does. But hey, Vito, quick for you. For those watching out there, and like you said, there's always somebody that'll comment or email me or Dave or somebody that says, "Hey, thanks for that show last week." For those watching that are either dealing with addiction or don't know that they're addicted, or something that I've been listening to you about, and I was talking to a professional in this field a couple weeks ago, and they were like, usually rock bottom, they don't hit it alone, and rock bottom, they'll bring 3 or 4 people with them sometimes. So my question, if you want to answer it, is, and for maybe somebody out there asking, when did you know that you were addicted, and what were some of the things that were like, this is where it stops, or like, this is at least where I go get help? Because I talk about it in a movie that we're in, and it's not a line. I talk about my reality. I talk about where I decided to go get help. Right? Like,
yeah.
What was it? Was something?
It wasn't my choice, honestly. It got to the point where, and this is, I'll say it. It's, it got to a point where I was going through some pretty severe like mental health, like psychosis, where I was starting to really believe things were there that weren't. I was really starting to, the paranoid aspect of and again, like it didn't hit me until, 2 things. Beck said, at one point, we're going to have to put you in a box. And that hit me pretty hard. And I think the biggest one that my wife was like, I don't recognize who you are anymore. And this is like somebody that, like truly knows me, like truly knows everything about me. We've, spent our entire, like, young adult life just like getting after it. Like we do a ton of fun stuff together. We're very active. We like to go ice climbing, rock climbing. Like we just went to the Himalayas. Like we really try to like and get the most out of life. And that's not what I was trying to do at that point. I was trying to destroy what I had for some reason other than some reason I'm still trying to figure out to this day, because, you know, again, you talk about how hard recovery is. I got through, you know, my dad, you know, getting super sick, and I was like, you know, I knew that I needed to like buckle down, right? We were moving from California back to the East Coast. You know, my dad was on his way out, so I was like really balancing between that, those things, and I was really focusing on all of that, right? I mean, shit, I've relapsed probably like, I've relapsed probably like 3 or 4 times already at this point, you know? And I'm not gonna lie about that. This is not it's not an easy thing to do. And what I've been finding out, hey, come here. Sorry.
The
And
dog
what I've been finding,
she's happy. The dog's excited, okay?
she's a dick.
You torture the dog.
Hey,
Have
sorry
to be
guys.
alive.
But like I'm coming to find out that I tend to want to destroy again when I'm on autopilot, when things start to get easy for me, when I don't really see, I get really short-sighted in my thinking, right? Really, really short. I can't see very far out in my thought process a lot of times. So then I go, how can I make my life more interesting? And unfortunately, I've tried some things that are super addicting. And if you don't, it's always that demon again, like whatever your demon is. If you don't do the work, if you're not going to meetings, if you're not doing what works for you, for me, it was meditating, it was exercising, it was talking to a therapist weekly, right? And that is a shit ton of work, right? Going to meetings, talking to your sponsor, working through your program. And I just slowly stopped kind of doing it because it felt hard in some levels, or I would make excuses and go, well, I'm busy doing this. I just moved out here. I'm going to go do this instead. Or, I can have a glass of champagne at weddings only, right? Like, again, the famous last words is I can control this, right? Which I can never do. And that was one of the harder things that I had to learn. I remember calling Becky multiple times being like, I hate this. Like, I hate the fact that like, I have to, I can't go have a drink at a party, or I can't, even though like alcohol wasn't like the serious thing, right? But it always led to something else. And if you look back, there's always one thing that leads to another. But it's right. The most recent time, Becky, my wife, called back, and the simple answer was, hey, go to a meeting and don't call me until you talk to your sponsor, right? And that was eventually that was the precipice for me wanting to continue to work on what I'm doing. I continue to work this through, right? Because I'm not done. They're talking about spirituality and talking about all of these things that have happened for a reason, right? You guys are in my life for a reason. Beck's in my life for a reason. I'm here for a specific reason. You can talk about destiny, fate, whatever it is. I think that everything is aligned to a point where I'm on this show right now and potentially could help maybe one person. If one person is going to go, hey, that guy, what he had, I'm going to check out that foundation, or, I'm going to look into this or something, or call a friend, but the short-sightedness of being in that panic mode and thinking that there's going to be no way out. The things that you've done are in cement, and they kind of create who you are now, is not the truth. It's not who you are, right? The things you do are mistakes. Yeah, you make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes, but they're not what define you. And I think in being an addict, or for me, I continued to replay everything I did wrong and everything I continued to do wrong, to the point where I am no longer a good person. I am no longer worth everything that I have. And I am a stranger, and I am an imposter to the world around me, right? My wife is a doctor. I'm surrounded by intelligent people, right? I put that in air quotes because I've seen doctors do a lot of stupid things. I've seen a lot of smart folks do silly things, and I held a lot of people in a higher regard than maybe I should have in life, and I think that also kind of set me up for some sort of failure. There's a lot of work, right? There's therapists you got to find, and finding mental health is not easy, right? But
Yeah,
again,
finding the
like,
right therapist.
finding the right therapist. I'm on my second therapist right now.
I
Right?
fired
And I would
5 at the
lie
dealer.
to my first one. I was paying my therapist $250 a session to lie to her. Right? How stupid is that? Right? Like, I was paying somebody who was supposed to help me, and I would get on and I'd go, yeah, everything's good. Like, I've tried this, but I'm like, but I wouldn't tell her the full truth. I wouldn't tell her exactly what was going on. Right? And it wasn't until like I recently found a new therapist 2 months ago, and it's like, all right, I'm gonna just truth bomb the shit out of this guy from the start. And like, these are the things that I think I'm having an issue with. These are like my kind of darkest secrets. Not in the first session, but as you work into it and start trusting this person, you're not going to tell this guy everything, but like, as soon as you feel comfortable with that, hey, like, I need to be like, this is where I'm struggling with every day. And it's being self-aware in that regard, right? It's being self-aware in the fact that, like, I do this. Why do I do this? Why is this like a habitual thing that I continuously do every day or every other day? Or why do I think this at this time? Or why do I feel this after I drank 6 cups of coffee? I'm wondering why my, anxiety's all over the place. Right. Yeah. So that, I mean, again, like, the whole recovery thing isn't easy. There's a lot of things that go into it, and there's a lot of self-awareness that needs to happen in order for you to kind of start picking apart what that I like the term demon that you have, right? Because it's always like there, how you can pick apart that demon and go, this is why you're there. This is why you keep coming up. And these are the sorts of things that I can start to do to get you further away from me, essentially. Because it's, unfortunately, for a lot of, for me, it's never going to go away. It's always going to be there. Like, that's something that I had to accept. And that was a really hard thing for me to accept, because it's never going to go away. And it's like it's something I'm going to have to keep working at. But it also makes me different it makes me different in certain ways that I actually like now. Right. But what were you going to say there?
I would hope, Vito, that if there are 2 things from this show, I would hope that people took away. One is that recovery is not a do this, and this, and then you're cured and you can go on with your life and never think about it again. It's a, like, you haven't, when you like accepted that was like a thing that you would be doing for the rest of your life, that you're always going to be recovering, is when you seem to have been more accepting of it and more comfortable with it. And then the other thing is, like, being on the other side of that, where we got the phone calls, like, being on the side where, like, I don't have all the answers, but in your case and in our case, there were 4 or 5 dudes that got on the phone with each other, and they were like, hey, one of our friends is having an issue. All right, like, you check out recovery places, you try to figure out how we can finance it or insurance can pay for it, you do this. And it was like the group came together to pick up. And I mean, we learned it in the military, right? Like, if somebody can't carry their ruck, you divvy up the weight and give it to everybody, and they'll carry it for a little bit until you're better. And I feel like, like, and I appreciate that you gave me a bunch of, like, kudos for helping you out, but I wasn't the only one there. There was a group of 5 or 6 of us that were there and like came together to make that happen. And I hope that other people can understand that when your buddy or when a friend of yours calls and they are having a problem, it's very easy to be like, yeah, well, I have issues too. And like your problems are like, I don't know what to do. So I'll give you some advice, but I'm not going to put any skin in the game and try to help you out. Um, like when people call you in their need and they have like they're in trouble, like it's not it's your duty to help your brother out. Like that's not a request, it's an obligation. Like you have
And
an obligation.
listen, real quick, listen. A lot of times we do want to give a solution right away, like listen.
Yeah,
Be that,
listen,
be
figure
that,
it out, and
Yeah, 'cause
then if you don't know, like like
there's somebody that does.
keeping a secret that your brother is in trouble doesn't help him out. The more people that know that are in the nest, the more people that know, the more people can put their network into place to help him out, the better. And like I said, you know, good people make bad decisions and get themselves into
all the
bad
time.
positions all the time. And if those good people get cut free because they've made a bad decision or got themselves into a bad place, that's how bad people are made. So, if you cut people away just because they made bad decisions, like you should really think about your life and like how you would want like we only treated Vito how we would want to be treated in the same exact situation. And man, like I'm like not even part of the show, but
Well, it is part of the show. You're gonna say it.
well, I'm going to at this point. Like the opposite end of being like, and I'm not going to sit here and lie and say that going through this with Vito has been uh I'm not going to go and say that seeing Vito go up and down hasn't at some points been very frustrating, but I will say that the like seeing him clean and sober is probably one of the the best things that I've ever been a part of.
Thanks,
And
buddy.
it's not like we didn't do the work. He's doing all the work. The group of friends and have definitely been there to facilitate the ability for him to do the work and to get in the right places, but actually doing the hard work that's been him. And he's just had a lot of people around him that like stood there beside him, well, his wife. I'm not gonna say, but like his wife is like a pillar, like
Yeah.
great person.
Absolutely.
And it also shows that if you have good people around you that are willing to give you a second, third, fourth chance, it means something in the end.
Hey, question from YouTube says, no disrespect from Caveman Look, but could all you on the panel give the time frame this was in? I don't know if he's asking about what year or how long of a period was this. How long
Is
this
it that it was?
We were in
Is
the
he talking about the
military?
time frame where we were in the military?
No, the time frame of like the recovery process, the group helping. Like, I think that's what he's asking.
I don't know. I
I mean, I
think
won't give months and years of when it happened, but
Right.
the process of recovery, going and if he was asking when I was in the military, I was in from 2000.
No, I think he was asking
2011.
like the time frame this was in, like I'm guessing.
I think he's asking when we were in the military. To be honest with you.
I think it's military.
Oh,
No disrespect to you.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So 2003
man,
to
I
2011.
retired in 2022, homie.
I was in from 98 until 2022. So
2003 to 2023, retired. Yeah.
wow. I remember when I didn't have a star on my CIB. That's crazy.
But hey, I do have to jump off, but I just want to, before I go, Matt, thank you so much for coming
thanks,
on
Appreciate
here and sharing like all that. I think Buddy pretty much hit all the points. But a lot of people that go through addiction, sometimes, my mom even just texted me It makes me a little. We lost somebody in the family because of addiction, and he was addicted to heroin. My cousin Colin.
Sorry.
And my mom is saying, watching on the TV, Vito has such a good success story. That is not often the case, and that's true, man. So just if you're out there and you're going through some things like what we've built here with Veteran Trash Talk and VTT Official, like utilize your community. Like we always say, get the demon out, and it takes you as an individual a lot of times to, say, all right, enough is enough, but then utilize the people around you. There are so many people that care about you and love you, and reach out. And like I say in the intro, it's okay not to be okay. But again, Matt, appreciate everything. I guarantee you're going to help somebody with this, so for anybody who's watching, check out the episode later. And yeah, bro, love you, man. And
love you too, man. Thanks, dude.
Saturday. All right.
Later, thanks, dude.
Later, Dave. Well, I think I didn't read that far into the script.
Do you mind if I just?
You're supposed to give the AR, buddy.
Do you mind if I just shoot a couple things that I wanted to share that I kind of rambled on over?
So, last words, plugs. Do what you got to do, Vito, and then Buddy will do the AR, and I'll close this out.
Some of the organizations that I've been looking at that have been doing great work. There's one out of Jackson Hole. It's called Front Country Foundation. I was just listening to a podcast about this gentleman he's an ex-Navy doc.
Okay.
But if you go to his website, Front Country Foundation, he takes individuals. And his story is really interesting. Like he was, and I'll say this because he basically said he was going to commit suicide and decided to go surfing with his buddy the next day. And he decided he was going to, commit suicide after that. And after he got done surfing, he realized, okay, I got some movement and I'm feeling better. And he didn't want to do it anymore. So he started this organization that gets 2 or 3 veterans, no cost to them. He flies them out to Jackson Hole, sets them up with a backcountry ski gear. Whether you're a snowboarder or skier, he'll get you out, teach you about avalanche awareness, and then the whole premise is for you to take. Again? His name is Cam, but the name of the organization is frontcountryfoundation.org. And again, it's a great way. He talks a lot about EMDR, and I don't if a lot of vets have done EMDR for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's very similar when you're moving on skis or you're hiking or anything like that. Your eyes are moving. You're basically doing that same motion, right? It's that eye movement desensitization therapy. So, and you're also with a couple other veterans, so it's a great organization. And I think that was the only one that I wanted to plug. A great book that I read that really helped me learn about addiction itself was Dopamine Nation by Anna Lemke, and I know I shared some stuff with you, Nick, about it. But
great
she
author,
really,
books.
She's a really intelligent woman who really put like what dopamine and how addiction really how it essentially works in our body and our brains as neurotransmitters, and that really helped me. I like to get behind the science of how things work, so that's kind of what I wanted to share with everybody today.
The Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation.
And of course, the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation, as we talked about, SOBA in New Brunswick, New Jersey, was, I owe them guys. I owe them a lot. I owe those guys a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Vito, for a lot. I mean, it's, I know that it's, like personally, I know it's hard to share. I know that it's definitely hard to share. It's easy to share when it's something you're proud of. It's less easy to share when it's something that you wish you hadn't had to go through. And like I said, I know we all appreciate it. And I know that that somebody's going to see it, and somebody will appreciate it. And maybe it'll make a change for at least one or two people. The AAR for this show is, first thing first, we got to figure out this season 2, volume 2, whatever. That's ridiculous at this point. And then the as we talked about the wildfires in California. And at the end of the day, what we did conclude was you can dislike and question the policies of the administration in LA County or anywhere for that matter, but you do have to delineate between the policies and the administration and the people that are still dealing with the effects, whether they're homeless because their house burned down, or they're the firefighters that are trying to, fight fires with no water, or they're the police officers that are trying to go, save a bunch of autistic kids from a fire 2 minutes before it burns down and almost losing their lives doing it. So our thoughts and definitely prayers go out to those first responders and those people that are having to deal with it. Not only the fires, but there's still people trying to deal with recovery from Hurricane Helena, and the other natural disasters that happened in this country in the last year or so. And then Vito came on and talked to us about kind of his journey through recovery, his trials and tribulations, and what has worked for him, and kind of his take from having to go through recovery, sobriety, relapse, and then through it again. And again, Vito, like I said, like I know that it's not easy for you to get on there, but I applaud you coming on and just kind of being vulnerable and letting yourself out there, and being able to share all those things. So, Nick, you're the one that does all the other stuff.
Yeah, appreciate that. And Vito, yeah, pleasure seeing you again via the StreamYard, i.e. Zoom on steroids. But yeah, hey, go check out shop.veterantrashtalk.com. Speaking of the Ultimate Sacrifice Foundation, 5% of all of our profits go to them. If you buy their shirt or a couple other shirts, 100% of that profit goes to them. Go to our sponsors, Corey at Veterans Mortgage Source, powered by Canopy Mortgage. Do that, and then PCS to Paradise. Other than that, we will see you guys next week. You guys stick around and wait till after the video.